Hello, I'm Laureen Dixon, Congregational Leader of the Sisters of Charity of Australia.
Hello, I'm Richard Haddock, Chair of Trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. In 2019, the Congregational Leader and Council and the Trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries agreed to set up a joint working party to review the preparation and carriage of pilgrimages here in Australia and of course Ireland.
Pilgrimages provide a wonderful opportunity for reflection, experience and immersion into a story, a tradition and cultural history that began over 200 years ago.
It seems providential now that this work began before COVID. Towards the end of 2019, a group of participants for the May 2020 pilgrimage was selected and they began their preparation. Sadly, that pilgrimage had to be cancelled, and as COVID has continued to ravage our world, we've been unable to make a pilgrimage in 2021.
With this in mind, the Working Party decided to create a virtual pilgrimage to Ireland. For those who have not been on a pilgrimage to Ireland, we hope this might be an entree, an introduction to the rich experience that awaits you. For those who have made a pilgrimage to Ireland, we hope it is a reminder of your own experiences, including the wonderful hospitality of the Sisters of Charity. As you make this virtual pilgrimage, or remember your actual pilgrimage, you're invited to immerse yourself more deeply into Mary Aikenhead's life, mission and legacy.
In launching this virtual pilgrimage, we'd like to thank Sister Patricia Lenihan, Sister Geraldine Hamilcale, Sister Mary Roach and Sister Mary Christian for their welcome and for sharing the stories.
Hello, I'm Sister Patricia Lenihan, Congregational Leader of the Religious Sisters of Charity. For many years, we have welcomed pilgrims from Australia to Ireland, and today it's my privilege to welcome you in a somewhat different way. Our Australian friends who have been on pilgrimage here in the past have connected with the founding story of the Religious Sisters of Charity and explored the life and times of our foundress, Mary Aikenhead. Our story as Religious Sisters of Charity has a direct and tangible connection with your stories and your connection with the Sisters of Charity of Australia. And as you know, that story began with 5 Sisters of Charity arriving in Australia in 1838. The COVID-19 pandemic has meant that pilgrimages are not possible at the moment. And therefore, this virtual pilgrimage has been created to show you some of the places that are important to our story. Pilgrims have gained a rich understanding of the role spirituality has played in the history of Ireland. So let's start our virtual pilgrimage at Glendalough, about 50 kilometres west of Dublin.
You're all very welcome to Glendalough today. Glendalough, of course, means in Irish the Valley of the Two Lakes, and it was made famous by St. Kevin, a monk from the 6th century, who turned his back on the power and wealth of his noble birth and chose to live as a hermit here at the upper lake in a cave. It's important to remember when we come to places like Glendalough just how important they were as centres of education and centres of missionary work. We had monks who studied here under Kevin and others who then left Ireland and brought the message back to Europe, who of course had just gone through the Dark Ages, where the faith and civilization had almost broken down. And it was Irish monks who really saved that civilization, very much like the way Irish missionaries are regarded around the world for the work that they've done. And I know that we have a group here, the Sisters of Charity, who of course left to go to Australia in the 1800s. And I suppose that's the way missionary work has continued from Ireland to this very, very day.
Our virtual pilgrimage now travels to Cork. Cork is the second largest city in Ireland and is in the south of the country. Here, Mary Aikenhead was born in 1787 to a Protestant father called David and a Catholic mother called Mary. As a baby, due to poor health, Mary was given into the care of John and Mary Rourke, a Catholic couple who lived on Eason's Hill just outside the city. Living in this local workman's cottage, Mary became aware of the hardships that many of the local families faced, including poor health and hunger.
Being a child, of course, she didn't have any kind of prejudices, which I suppose prejudices are something that unfortunately we learn as adults and so on. So she took to these people as her friends, and she played with the little Catholic children who lived on that part of the north side of the city of Cork. And as a result, in her later life, when she made the transition to become a Catholic and to work with poor Catholic people, she already knew these people pretty well just because of that circumstance.
Mary would attend Mass at the local cathedral, which was then called the North Chapel, with her foster parents. As a young woman, during Mass in the South Chapel in Cork, Mary heard the story of Dives and Lazarus, and this became a turning point in her life, and she decided to devote the rest of her life to caring for the poor.
When she was at Mass here, Dr. Francis McCarthy, the co-adjutant Bishop of Cork, gave the homily, and it was on Dives and Lazarus. And she was struck very forcibly by that, and it did something to her. You could really say, I suppose, that she got a vocation to that kind of work anyway, because immediately she began to help the poor in the city, going into their homes and helping them, especially the sick poor, with friends. And it was later then that she thought that she would like to do it as a religious, so that the work would continue.
At the age of 23, Mary sought to join a religious order, and with the help of Dr. Murray, Archbishop of Dublin, she travelled to the Bar Convent in York, where she would commence her novitiate.
Our virtual pilgrimage moves to York and the convent of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary at Micklegate Bar. Mary wanted to undertake her novitiate with an order that had no vows of enclosure, meaning she could visit the poor in their homes. The Bar Convent was Mary's home for 4 years, and during this time, Mary prepared for founding of what would become the Sisters of Charity.
While she was in the Bar Convent in York, she had an opportunity to study the Ignatian spirituality and also to make a retreat guided by those principles. And somehow she knew that this is what God was asking her for her new congregation, to follow the spirituality of St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Our virtual pilgrimage now returns to Dublin, Ireland. Mary returned from York with her companion Alicia Walsh and moved into this house in North William Street, where they began caring for a small group of orphans. This is also the place where Mary and Alicia made their first profession of vows, with Mary being appointed Superior General. Within 2 months, a school was opened. The sisters were overwhelmed with the poor children in the neighbourhood wanting to attend. More sisters joined, and soon home visitation of the sick and poor could begin.
Africa, America and Australia.
Oh, you're very welcome.
4 convents. So that's this little story that began here.
As word of the sisters' mission spread, Mary realised that a new house would be needed in order to train the postulants. And the Stanhope Street Convent was opened in 1819 as the first formal novitiate of the Sisters of Charity. The sister service of the poor expanded as prison visitation commenced. One of the young women to enter the convent at Stanhope Street was Sister Mary John Calle, who would be one of the first pioneering sisters to travel to Australia.
And many came to hear about it, and Mary Xavier Williams then was here for about 40 years, and eventually a new school had to be built.
As the small convent and school at North William Street became overcrowded, the congregation needed more space. Providence would prevail to provide the funds for a new convent and school at Gardner Street. The sisters also opened a dispensary where the poor could come for a morning or midday meal.
Our next destination on this virtual pilgrimage is St. Stephen's Green in the centre of Dublin. In 1834, the Sisters of Charity opened St. Vincent's Hospital, the first Catholic hospital in Ireland. Building the hospital was a long and difficult undertaking for Mary Aikenhead. But with the ongoing support of Bishop Murray, her friend Dr. O'Farrell, and a generous community, St. Vincent's Hospital opened with 12 beds. Mary's long-held desire that the poor be given for love what the rich obtain for money was becoming a reality. St. Vincent's developed into one of Ireland's leading teaching hospitals and relocated to Elm Park, South Dublin, as St. Vincent's University Hospital with 600 beds.
We now travel 4 kilometres to the west of Dublin city to Kilmainham Jail. Mary Aikenhead saw prison visitation as integral to the service of the poor, and the Sisters of Charity would make daily visits to comfort and pray with the prisoners. Kilmainham held thousands of ordinary men, women and children. Their crimes ranged from petty offences such as stealing food to more serious crimes. Within these walls, convicts from many parts of Ireland were held for many months, waiting to be transported to Australia.
Today, Mary Aikenhead's legacy continues as the congregation seeks to serve the poor in the 21st century through community outreach and advocacy on behalf of those made poor. Just 2 examples of this happening today in Dublin are the Immigrant Council of Ireland and the Oasis Counselling Centre. The Immigrant Council of Ireland is a human rights organization and an independent law centre. It strives to ensure that people from a migrant background have the opportunity to fulfill their potential. It supports and advocates for the rights of immigrants and their families, and acts as a catalyst for public debate and policy change.
There is migrants who are at particular risk or vulnerability that we target to work with, and those who have been trafficked or experiencing sexual exploitation or gender-based violence have become a core group of ours.
The Oasis Centre is situated in an area of inner city Dublin that is beset with many social problems.
About over 100 years we had what we called here St. Anthony's Penny Dinners, and it was in that building right there. And when at the height of the need, there was 4 sittings a day for people who used to come looking for food here. It could be up to 1,000 people a day.
The Oasis Centre provides affordable counselling to the people of the area, especially those of low income, who otherwise would not be able to avail of counselling.
Oh yes.
No person is denied of counselling because of finances.
What we would call development.
Over 7,000 people are helped at the centre each year.
We now travel to the west of Ireland to a town in Mayo called Foxford. In 1892, Mother Agnes Mara Bernard, a Sister of Charity, was witness to the dire state of this rural community, described as a place of squalor, destitution and disease. Working with community supporters and business people, Mother Agnes built the Foxford Woolen Mills as a way of providing regular employment to break the cycle of poverty. The mills are a testament to the trust the sisters place in divine providence, and this is beautifully symbolized in the stained glass window in the Foxford convent. The mill is still in operation, though on a smaller scale, and gives local employment. The convent has been repurposed into an alcohol and drug rehabilitation centre.
We now travel to Waterford in the province of Munster, about 160 kilometers southwest of Dublin. The Sisters of Charity established the Lady Lane Convent in 1842, and shortly after, a school. In 1802, Edmund Rice, the founder of the Christian Brothers, had established a free school for boys living in poverty in Waterford. His aim was to promote an education that recognized the dignity of each person. Through Edmund Rice's writing, Mary Aikenhead was aware of Edmund Rice's thinking and incorporated parts of his approach into the schools conducted by the sisters.
Mary Aikenhead made contact with Edmund Rice about supplying, a brother to help Mother Xavier out, in the running of the school. And it wasn't any sense of doing something about discipline, but it was something about like structure. The brothers had developed, textbooks and curriculum and that sort of stuff, and could they provide, teaching instruction? Because largely the people in both cases for both orders, they weren't qualified teachers by any means, but they were people of goodwill, willing to do something about it. So it was a way, I suppose, of providing some training to the sisters in how to teach, how to do this, how to get the skill set of teaching or the profession of teaching. So we know that was there in a real sense.
Our virtual pilgrimage now returns to Dublin, and we are here at the Mary Aikenhead Heritage Centre in Harold's Cross, just 20 minutes from the city centre. As well as a myriad of historic items and artworks, there are inspiring multimedia presentations to provide an insight into the life and times of Mary Aikenhead, the spirit of the congregation, its origins, and its continuing expression today. For most pilgrims, standing in Mary Aikenhead's room is a particularly moving experience. This was Mary's home in her final days. At the centre of the room is Mary Aikenhead's desk, where she continued to write to her sisters, even though in poor health and much pain.
Presented to Dear Reverend Mother by the Sisters of Charity Australia upon the occasion of her Golden Jubilee in January 1894. Mary Aiken has died, but it's one of her successors, not her immediate successor, but the one after that, Sister Scholastica Martinson. So there's just exquisite artwork and little things that you might want to look at, St. Vincent's Hospital.
In the grounds of St. Mary's, Donnybrook, is the grave of Mary Aikenhead. Visiting the grave is an opportunity for pilgrims to pause and reflect on Mary's life, her achievements, and how she continues to inspire people around the world to continue her work.
Our virtual pilgrimage ends at Dunleary Harbour, just south of Dublin. For a short time, the area was known as Kingstown, and it was here the first 5 sisters left Ireland on their journey to Australia in 1838, a journey that would take 4.5 months. Standing on the harbour's shoreline, we can only contemplate the feelings of those women as they said goodbye to family, friends, the congregation, and their homeland. This was a journey of courage, passion, and tenacious faith in divine providence, and a defining chapter in a story that continues almost 2 centuries later.
What would Mary Aikenhead want us to do today? We have our charism, this rich charism that was left to us and to our church. And constantly we see all the different problems that are around us, different needs today, and we just have to keep asking, how would Mary Aikenhead serve the poor if she were here today? That's the constant question we have on our lips, because she is our foundress. She's the person that was responsible for all the work that has gone on over the last 200 years. I hope you have been inspired and uplifted by this virtual pilgrimage, and hopefully one day in the future we will be able to welcome you here in person. I know our sisters will be delighted to see you. We'll welcome you warmly, we'll share their stories and look forward to hearing your stories. Please visit our website to learn more about the Religious Sisters of Charity and our foundation story. You could also download the Walking with Mary Aikenhead app. The app shows you the exact location of important places in Mary's life, along with images and insightful commentary. Thank you for joining us on this virtual pilgrimage. Just before we depart, I would like to express immense gratitude on behalf of the Religious Sisters of Charity throughout the world for all that you do in carrying forward Mary Aikenhead's legacy in our complex world.
We thank you, God, for the courage of these sisters and the generosity of Mary Aikenhead in giving 5 of her sisters to the Australian mission. We are here today because of that first sea crossing. We ask to be blessed with new energy and enthusiasm to continue to walk in the footsteps of those who have gone before us. Help us always to act justly and to be gentle and caring of others, to love tenderly as we continue our journey through life.